Hello, so I'm here to talk about independent media in Cuba, in contemporary Cuba. I'm waiting for my presentation to come up in the screen. There we are. So this is my topic. I'm Lizabel Mónica. I'm an interdisciplinary writer and educator. Next, please. So I'm gonna go straight to the topic. So my dissertation is based on the impact of digital media, of digital technology in the literary field in Cuba. And this is part of my dissertation. I'm gonna stand up. So this is one of the sections in my presentation. This is about what happened between 2015 and 2021. As I say in my presentation and in my dissertation, in this period is when we see the digital press, the digital independent media in Cuba being established. So this is the period when these media come to the surface and are at the core of the conversation for the national public sphere in Cuba. So in 2010, I mentioned several magazines and several media. So this is one of the first magazines in Cuban independent media, Encuentro de la Cultura Cubana. And this was, again, one of the very first. It was in the 90s, but was an inspiration for everything that came after. And this was a printed magazine, but I'm mainly talking about media that is not printed, that is on the internet, websites circulating among devices, etc. So, so one of the cases I study is Pala Música Underground. As you can see, it's right there. So Pala Música Underground started in 2012, and it went straight to the online sphere, okay? So this was never printed, it was meant for the internet. Next. Next, please. Thank you. Okay, Para Música on the ground. So Para Música, the translation is as for the music. It's an informal way. Pala is for, but in informal language. So Para Música on the ground, it was launched as an electronic newsletter. So it was launched via email, and then it went to the internet. And we can see several transitions. This media still exists. So from 2012 to the present, it went through different stages. So one of the transitions is the language which the publication is using to refer to itself. And another transition is the media that is using the format, okay? So starting with the language, this is my first paragraph. It was meant as a digital platform in 2012, and it went to an independent publication in recent times. And this language is important in the context of Cuba because we have the monopoly of the state in the media. We don't have anything that is legal outside of the media that is controlled by the state. It's simply illegal. So all of the magazines I'm talking about today, all of these websites are considered illegal, but they are running because we want to have something different from what the state is presenting. Okay, so we have also, this is the second paragraph, we have between this first stage and more recent stages, we have that this media went from having text, photos, and downloads in 2014 to music, videos, and podcasts in recent times. So we are seeing a transition in media itself, in the formats, in the content that is presenting. A final transition is this last paragraph. This media is nowadays talking about freedom of artistic expression. So it's talking about the freedom that this magazine believes should be on the side of the artists and musicians. Next, please. Cyber Cuba, this is another of my cases. So Cyber Cuba, well, or Cyber Cuba, as you can see from the very title of the magazine, is calling itself a media that is meant for the internet, for the cyberspace, right? So Cyber Cuba was born in 2014. Two Cubans that live in Spain decided to work together and create this magazine. We have a lot of these media that I'm mentioning today are founded outside of Cuba for more or less obvious reasons, because it's easier, because it's really hard in Cuba, because in Cuba it's not only illegal, you can also be um, persecuted by the state, by the police, if you do this in Cuba. Okay, some a lot of these cases are a mix of something that is being done in the outside and also in the inside. Okay, but the founders are mostly in the outside. Okay, so Cyber Cuba, based in Spain, but again, is in the internet. Um, this project was founded to present, it has a dissident language, as I mentioned, but it wants to present different news that are not covered by the state media. There is another initiative. This is not really a publication. This was it ran between 2014 and 2016. It was Red de Información Voluntaria por Cuba. This was via email. So it was an email that you received if you were a Cuban person. You received this in your inbox, and it was meant to circulate information. As you can see in the quote, residents in Cuba can send to this network an email with a message, news from Cuba that do not appear in the official media, or their request for specific information. So this was not only meant to distribute information that were produced by the people that were doing this was also meant to receive information from the people that was receiving, again, this in the email. So if I received this, I could go respond that email and say, I need information about, let's say, I don't know, the topic of race in Cuba, and they could send you information back. And that's key in Cuba, again, because of the lack of information. Next. Okay, so in 2014, and again, I'm going from 2014, 2015 to the present. In 2014, we had Diario de Cuba and Cubanet, which are very present media in Cuba. And we had also Progreso Semanal, it was founded in 2009 and is running to the present. On Cuban News, that's also a publication on the internet, and 14 Medios. So some of these are outside of Cuba, are on Cuba and on Cuban News. They belong to the same people. And 14 Medio was a newspaper founded by Joanny Sanchez, who had a blog before. She was featured in the New York Times at some point in the early 2000s as a blogger, and now she founded this independent newspaper. So this is an evolution that we can see in the media sphere in Cuba. We are going from blogs, again in the early 2000s, to independent media. We are focusing now on journalism and newspapers. Okay, so we have El Toque. That's another very visible independent media platform. Yeah, next. Okay, so several of the trends. Here I'm trying to see what these publications are talking about. What are they focusing their attention on? So El Toque, for instance, is focusing in data, again, information, because this is important in Cuba. We don't have a lot of information. So any information that is generated outside of the monopoly of the state is valuable information. So El Toque is distributing data, is talking about gender equality, is something that is the government is not talking about it's not talking about this topic either. It's talking also about environmental issues, which is also missing from the state media. So these are some of the trends, and we can see this in El Toque, but we can see these topics in other media as well, in other independent media. So periodismo de barrio, and here I mentioned several of those media that are present in nowadays media sphere in Cuba. Periodismo de barrio, 2015, Playoff Magazine, which is devoted to sports. El Estornudo, which is trying to do some sort of cultural journalism, some journalism that is related to literature. We have Postdata, again, this is focusing on data. We have Negolution, which is a kind of a game with revolution, and negocio, which is business in Spanish. So this is kind of a playful notion between a revolution and business purposes. So Negolution, and we have Tremenda Nota, which is devoted to the LGBTIQ and plus community, Afro-descendants, migrants, discrimination in general. Again, these are topics that are not covered by the state media. Puente a la Vista and A las Tensas, which is a literary publication that ended up being a different kind of publication. Next. Okay, so the media sphere expanded. What I mean when I say expanded, I'm trying to say that this media sphere which was really, really small in 2013, for instance, now it has expanded and it's really big, and it has diverse voices nowadays. So we have all of these topics that I mentioned, but we are talking about several media. So we have a lot of people working on this, and we have different voices. Okay, so and this expansion, I placed this expansion between 2014 and 2018. So Árbol Invertido is a literary magazine, and it's another case that I study because for me it represents the transition between the literary magazine and the journalist enterprise. Next. Okay, so Árbol Invertido. It was founded by poet Francis Sanchez, and it was initially a poetry magazine. Árbol Invertido is also meant as a reference to women. Okay, so it was founded by Francis Sanchez, but also by his partner, and they were focusing on environmental sustainability, but they were also trying for this to be one of the leader magazines that are made outside, not just outside of Cuba. I said most of these magazines are done outside of Cuba, but this one is not only done from the inside, it's also done from Ciego de Ávila, sorry, which is a province in Cuba. It's not the capital. And this is key because, again, most of the magazines are done from the outside or in Havana, but this is not. Okay, so it's self-labeled as an island magazine. So it's like an island inside the island. And as the quote says, not only because we exist outside of the capital, but because we try to reflect on the internal needs of our culture. And by internal, they don't mean only Cuba, they mean internal like as in the interior of the country, going beyond the capital, beyond Havana, serving those people who are more in need of expressing themselves and communicate freely. Next. Okay, so one factor, again, I'm trying to see what this media is talking about, what these publications are covering, what are they interested in. So one factor that makes this literary magazine to go from a poetry publication to a newspaper, I would say, is that most of the people that are participating in nowadays independent media in Cuba are journalists. So we transitioned from at the beginning of the century, 2021. I mean, in 21st century. At the beginning of the century, we had literary magazines, and those were the first magazines that came into a sphere of digital press. Before that, it was only printed press. So these writers started to make these literary publications, and they were PDF, they were PowerPoints, they were things like that. It wasn't internet just yet. It was something that was circulating among people. So I had a magazine. I could give that magazine to a fellow writer, and that fellow writer could distribute that in an external hard drive, right? So that happened at the beginning of the 21st century, and then we were talking about writers. It was mostly writers, but now we have journalists, and these are the people that are doing the contemporary independent media in Cuba. They are not writers anymore. They are journalists. Okay, so that's something that is different, and I could say is playing, is one of the factors that makes this magazine less literary and more focused on the news, right? On the events, instead of something that could be more transcendental. Okay, next. So another factor is that we are talking about the what I call the digital native writers. So we are not talking about writers, the writers that began with the digital publications at the beginning of the 21st century. They were people that came from the 90s, that some of them had computers, some of them didn't. Internet, again, some of them, but they didn't have the phone all the time, right? Those are the digital natives. And again, journalists, digital native writers are the people that are playing a role in the digital media today. Next. So another factor. So social media. Social media is key for this media sphere because most of the promotion is done by social media. Also because most Cubans nowadays are in social media. And this is new in Cuba. When we talk about social media in Cuba, we're talking about the last 10 years. It's not that far away from us, it's different. So we have Cubans in social media, we have these digital magazines promoting themselves in social media mainly. Okay? So in the old times, we were talking about flyers. You could go to the street, you could distribute a flyer, and you could say, I have a digital magazine or I have a printed independent press, and you can see it this way, you can go to this address, you can get it that way. But nowadays it's social media. You post it on Facebook, you post it on Instagram, you post it on Twitter, and that's the way it goes. That's how you promote your enterprise, your cultural enterprise. Another way is el paquete semanal, is this. And of course, we have YouTube, Facebook Live. El paquete semanal is an interesting media. I would say this is a medium. And this is like a physical terabyte of information that is distributed among Cubans inside the island. So if you live in Cuba, you can pay for this. You can pay for this like $1 or $2. I don't know if that's the price right now, but it used to go that way. So you go to a person that lives in your neighborhood, you pay $2 and you get a terabyte, a physical terabyte of information. And you have this is pirated information, right? You have movies, you have TV shows, you have everything there. And when I say everything, I say what was well, what is in the movie theater in United States last week is coming really quickly to this. It's really fast. Again, it's pirated information. It runs fast. So in these places, you have also the independent media. Some of them, not all of them. Next. Okay. So social media, and when I say social networks in here, I mean something that is between social media and networks and human networks, right? That's why I say social networks. I mention this as hybrid networks in another place of this presentation. So in 2021, the main channel for circulation of information is social media. So we don't only have El Paquete right now, we also, or Facebook, or Instagram or Twitter. We are also talking about Telegram. We are also talking about Sapia, which is something that you use to transmit information from one phone device to another phone device, right? And this is something that happens in person. You don't need Wi-Fi for this, right? Okay, so we have that. What else? And we have this study. This is something that two engineers, computer engineers, made for an artist. They analyzed a lot of data and they come up with the conclusion that the main way of accessing and disseminating information today is social media, the digital magazines, internet browsers, friends, and family. And this is key. Again, we are not talking only about Facebook, internet, this not connected application like Sapia. We are also talking about people-to-people connections, networks. We are also talking about a person that is going to the neighbor and say, here, I have this. This is a good movie. You can have it. Okay? And again, that happens with the news, with the independent media. Here, I have this news. Did you see what came out today? Did you see this news? Take it, I have it, right? Next. Okay, so el paquete semanal. El paquete semanal is an interesting medium, right? A lot of people are talking about this because it's very uncommon. In Cuba, it's very useful for circulating information. So this medium is coming from a long tradition. What I say, this is not new. This is coming from a long tradition of sharing information in Cuba, grassroots, right? Grassroots tradition of sharing information. And it's not only sharing, it's compiling, it's making these collections, these curated collections. So I put content together and I say this content is good, okay? And I'm thinking of my audience, and my audience are my neighbors, my friends, my family. So this is curated information made by people, regular people, okay? So we have a long tradition of that with different formats, as you can see in there, and now is el paquete. Okay, so this is a collectivist vision of the sharing of information. We have a different approach to information. In Cuba, the state says that information should be free, but the people also think that information should be more or less free. That's why pirate information is so popular, and that's why we share information in this way. Next. Okay, so most of the current Cuban press, and I'm talking not just right now about the alternative or independent media, but also the state media, is produced nowadays for the digital sphere, right? And is intended to be consumed through electronic devices, such as el paquete, such as internet, such as your phone, okay? And I'm calling these hybrid Cuban networks again because we are talking about social media, but we are talking about human networks, right? Family, friends, neighbors. Next. Okay, the magazines in El Paquete. So something that is interesting, we have different magazines in El Paquete, and these are different from those that appear in the internet. So if I have a magazine that is a website, that may be different from the magazine that is distributed exclusively in El Paquete. And we have those. We have those types of circulation, and they differ. So one example is the Blanco Bodas en Cuba, and this is like white. Blanco is white in Spanish, and Bodas in Cuba is weddings, right? So you know where this is going to. So this is a magazine devoted to wedding dresses, mainly wedding dresses. So anything that is related to weddings. And this magazine is distributed in El Paquete. Why? Because it's a very, very popular topic. We have a lot of people in Cuba, as in any other place, that are interested in weddings, and they want to marry. They like all this white, sparkly world, right? So this is a magazine in El Paquete. So how this magazine sustains itself? Well, it sells, it promotes businesses in Cuba, and we are talking about businesses that are run by people, again, not businesses run by the state, that are selling these wedding dresses, anything related to weddings. Okay, so this is one way this magazine is sustaining itself. And we have a lot of cases in El Paquete because of the large audience that the Paquete has that are meant for popular purposes. Okay, next. Okay, in terms of circulations, so we have a difference because el paquete is circulating inside the island, and the newspapers that are in the internet can be blocked, right? And they are blocked by the state, by the government. So sometimes you cannot access those, but you can do access the ones that are in a paquete. But how that happens is the government not censoring those that are in el paquete. They are. El paquete has two type of censorship. One that is run by the people that are doing el paquete themselves. They auto censor themselves, and they say if you bring something that is politics, that cannot go inside the paquete, just like that. Okay, because they are protecting the medium. They know that their medium cannot exist if they include something that is politics. They also receive visits from the police and from the state security, just making sure that they are not going outside the lines. right? So in the internet, we have those media that can say something about politics, but in El Paquete, we don't have those, okay? So those are different. So we have also, and this is data, it's official data, and you can see that a lot of people in Cuba are still not connected to the internet. Okay, they cannot access internet that easily. So what you have is for the media that is on the internet, they are being consumed by people from outside the island mainly. And El Paquete is being consumed by people from inside. Okay? So those are different too, different audiences. Okay, next. So another difference between these two audiences is that from the outside, it's not just Cubans that are in the outside, Cubans that live in the outside and that can go to internet freely. It's also academics, and I found out that United States academia is one of the main consumers of this media. Um, in the inside, again, popular topics are what you can see the most in El Paquete. Next. Okay, so So I mentioned this, which is if we are talking about the political spectrum. So when we say politics, what are we talking about? What politics. So in the media that are covering politics, we have right now, as in any other place, unfortunately, we have this polarized version of politics. We have black and white, right and left, and we have more or less nothing in the middle, which is unrealistic for any place. But in the Cuban case, we have still something in the middle that is small, but you can see it. And some cases are on Cuban news and Segunda Cita. Um, and I say that the contest right now is this center, is this space in the middle. This is the more contested space in the media sphere in Cuba. So this is the place that is being contested, and it's the place that the president, the current president in Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel, is calling the confused people, right? Because they cannot be they are not revolutionary. They are not against the revolution. You cannot place them easily. So they are confused, right? Next. Okay, so this is my last slide. This is a lot of information. Um, so another thing that is concerning to me, I say that this concerns me, is that in the current media in Cuba, again the independent media in Cuba, we have less diverse voices. Yes, we are talking about gender equality, environmental issues, those issues that we didn't see before, and these are important. Race, we have those at the center. But I could say that we are elaborating collectively a consensus right now, on those issues and different issues. What is to be a citizen in the world? What is to be a citizen in Cuba? What is a nation? What is a country? Right? We are going towards this consensus. We are elaborating this consensus in this media that is very visible, that is at the core of social media for Cubans nowadays. And in this consensus, I don't see other voices that used to be visible, but they are not visible today. And those voices were questioning things like what is the nation, what are national symbols, We had also Porno para Ricardo, which is, it was talking about pornography and politics and what are the links between those. We have those, but they are relegated to a side place right now. They are not visible anymore. While we are creating this consensus, we don't have those as visible as they used to be. So this is my last paragraph. So suppose the combination of the US liberal press as a model and the implicit classism, because I talk about elitism, is behind this media, of Cuban actors in the independent media works as the new media paradigm. And I think this is happening. This is one of my theses. In that case, we will have to pay more attention to the sons of silences, okay? And I think we have those. I think that we need to do that because the Iceland is complex, okay? And to capture that complexity, we need to incorporate more voices, okay? Well, thank you. And if you have questions, I'm here for you. The microphone.
Hello, hello. Hi, I have a question. It is very clear from your presentation the immense amount of independent projects that exist. I want you to explain how that has affected the official media, which basically has been for 60 years a factory of fake news. So how is this working? What this has done to the official media?
You can imagine if you have all of these newspapers that again they are more popular in social media, for instance, than the official media is. So yeah, it's affecting a lot the monopoly of the rhetoric of what is happening in the country. So before we used to have the state media saying what was happening from the news to what you used to think, what you needed to think, what you needed to say in public, what you couldn't say in public, everything. They could tell you everything. Now we have something different. We have all of these newspapers. They are saying different things. They are talking about topics that are not covered in the state media. So yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. And as I say, it's more popular, it's more read than the official media. The national TV noticiero, how you call that? National TV emission used to be watched, used to be like the main source of news in Cuba. And people in Cuba, they are not watching this. And sometimes when they are not watching this, they are watching something in El Paquete, for instance. And it can be a movie, but it's a movie that is not proposed, it's not being proposed, it's not being given to you by the state. It's a movie that someone in the streets decided it could be a movie you could be interested in, right? So, yeah. More questions?
Bueno, en español. Sorry, I'm going to speak in Spanish.
I can translate.
Okay. Yo creo que algo que puede como impresionar si está fuera de Cuba es por qué puede interesar o asombrar, por ejemplo, una revista de bodas, ¿no? Y bueno, una crítica que yo creo que no necesariamente se hace con esta diversidad es que el Estado tenga sus medios oficiales, porque se entiende que, bueno, que todos los estados tienen propaganda y tienen una agenda política específica, pero ¿por qué asombra que en Cuba de pronto haya una revista de bodas que se pueda distribuir independientemente y esto el gobierno lo considera una amenaza?
Yeah, that's actually a very good question. So, why a wedding magazine or a magazine devoted to weddings is so interesting in the Cuban context, right? So, and why this is considered a threat for the Cuban government or to the Cuban government. So, this is a very good question for me to answer, because when I say elitism in my presentation, it seems like it's coming only from the independent media. But again, this is coming from the culture that the revolution in Cuba has created, this elitism. So when you have a government that is telling everything you need to say, to think, not to think, etc. So this is a very patronizing government, right? So they are saying, I know what you need. Okay, so you need to listen to me. I know what you need. So unfortunately, the independent media, because they are mostly graduates from universities, privileged people, educated people, and they have this legacy of a patronizing government and that was controlling the culture. So they are repeating this. So for some people in the independent media, and I didn't mention this, but it was written in there, they refer the independent media that is on the internet, they are referring to this wedding magazine as something that shouldn't be something you pay attention to. It's something that it doesn't matter. It's what is this? A wedding magazine? What is that? That's not culture, right? So yeah, so I think it's something that is considered dangerous not only for the government but also for this elite, because this elite
And collective moral.
exactly what Cuba is that that's paying attention to something that is not high culture, right? More questions, maybe?
Uh, in Cuba, we have small group of independent artists, and these artists are prohibited in all Cuba, in radio, television, inclusive in the Paquete de la Semana. The security of state go every week and look what is inside of this packet, and don't have permission for for yeah. And my point is, you speak about that before. It's about when you want move the information independent inside the Cuba, inside the borders of the island, you risk your body, because if you move this information, the police maybe come to your home, like happened with me and my friends in Cuba now. We have a few friends in prison now for movie opinion and independent. But we have Facebook, and so many people use a VPN for look at prohibited sites in the internet. And internet we can see more open vision about Cuba, about what happened now in Cuba. Internet is the best warrior we have now for talking about our reality. You speak about that before, but just want to say that. Thank you.
It's actually, maybe I don't emphasize this very much, but yeah, I should say there are people in prison in Cuba and jail because they distributed information. I mean, the government is looking into social media now. So we were talking about we are afraid of WhatsApp groups. We are afraid of social media groups because the government can go inside those even and they can get you in jail because you said something in a private group in social media. So, yeah. More questions?
I also have another question. What is the impact of? Do you know what will be the impact of the new penal code in Cuba in relationship with all these independent press? Since they are, some of them are edited and outside of Cuba, some of them receive some money from outside of Cuba. Do you have any? Can you share?
Again, they are basically illegal and they can send you to jail. Yes. So the government, this is something that I cover in the dissertation, not in this presentation, but there are several regulations, there are several laws that the government is implementing to catch up, to sort of trying to catch up with this media. So yeah, you cannot have a media that is published outside of Cuba. You cannot have a media that is receiving money that is from the outside. So there are a lot of these laws and regulations, and this is penalized, right? But they keep doing it because we need it. And some of these people, again, are outside of Cuba. So as soon as they don't go to Cuba, yeah, you survive.
Follow-on question. Just on the question of financing and what you can do as an independent media outlet when you're faced with these governmental bans on receiving external money. What kind of strategies are independent media groups adopting? Are they looking into, I don't know, like things like cryptocurrencies or solidarity economies, or how are they getting by?
Yeah, so basically solidarity economy. So they actually, that's something that I mentioned here. I didn't talk about it, but I mentioned it is because of this situation, the independent media is, it doesn't function like on demand. It doesn't function like a newspaper that you sell. No, it's free for everyone to see, and they're just trying to pay for the production of this, right? So they function as projects. They are projects, and they take money from anybody that is giving money to projects. Yeah. Outside of Cuba.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Outside of Cuba. No, in Cuba there is nothing like, there is no such thing. I mean, we have money for projects from the state, but they need to be super like
Yeah.
pro government.
And do you ever adopt like membership kind of subscription based?
No.
Okay.
I mean, some of them are starting to have something like that. They take donations. That as far as they go. Yeah, they take donations, but they are not subscription based, for instance. Yeah.
I want to add something. It's also because I'm Cuban, so I'm authority here. It's also because, let's say, like the natural market, the subscribers, the natural subscriber, most of them have like super low incomes. I mean, this is a struggle between food and information. So media is kind of liberation for exchange information. Sometimes you go to media for know how to get food or exchange goods or knowledge. So this is kind of hard process for us.
And I could say this is what I mentioned as the collectivist approach to information. This is the notion that information should be free, especially when you have poverty in the country, right? But this conception that information should be free is also behind the policies that they have. Yeah, non-subscription is free for everyone to have. I can say that people outside of Cuba can pay a subscription, for instance. They could, but it's still outside of what we think a media should do. Yeah, in Cuba. Yeah.
Yeah, media is more a services than a business.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know if you covered it at the start, but is there a change, or has there been a change, or is there a changing kind of plurality of like forms of media, or kind of structures of how it's, media is being presented, or as you say, kind of like the hegemonic thing that's kind of coming towards is like a liberal American style, media economy maybe, or something like that. But is there a plurality in kind of like media itself, like the kinds of media between, say, like just newspapers or an alternative space? Because I know you talked about punk band there.
Yes. Yeah. So I can say they have the U.S. media as a model, but again in the form in aesthetically. So it couldn't be as the distribution. It's not a model for distribution. So it's a model in terms of the topics it presents, in terms of the way the news is presented. Yeah. So, yeah, in that sense, the US media, I would say, is the model. It's more diverse because the US media is more or less diverse. I would say it's lacking more of the diversity that can have in the Cuban context. Because we had that. When we had the blogs, we had more diversity. That the one that we have right now is not that diverse compared. Yeah. Okay. That's it.